Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the National Timely Action Hour. This is the show where we talk about everything from comic books to Star Wars and everything in between. My name is Aiden, and I hope that you're doing well today. So in this video, I'm going to be doing a review of The Amazing Spider-Man, The Night Gwen Stacy Died. Now, this collected edition that I have collects The Amazing Spider-Man issues number 88 to 92, as well as issues 121 and 122. Now, this also collects the death of George Stacy, Gwen's father, as a bit of a context for the story of the death of Gwen. Now, the writers are Stan Lee, Jerry Conway, and the pencilers are Gil Kane and John Romita Sr. The inkers are John Romita Sr., Jim Mooney, Tony Mortallero, colors by David Hunt, letters by Sam Rosen and Art Simic, edited by Roy Thomas, and the cover art by Gil Kane and John Romita, and colors by Richard Isanov and Michael Keller did the colors for the covers. Now, this is one of, if not the most seminal moment in Spider-Man's publication history. This collects stories from the early 1970s, and it is definitely the transitional period from the Silver Age to the Bronze Age, although the Bronze Age did start in 1970 with the Green Lantern, Green Arrow, Hard Traveling Hero story arc. But Spider-Man, at this point, it's 1971-ish, 72, I believe. So we're already a couple of years into the Bronze Age. Spider-Man has been dealing with some serious issues, like over at DC. Spider-Man's best friend, Harry Osborn, took LSD and did not take to it very well. His father, Norman Osborn, is revealed to be the Green Goblin, although that was, a few years prior, when John Romita started, taking over the art duties after co-creator Steve Ditko left the book. But Peter was in a decent place at the start of this book. He was living with Harry, and he was in college, Empire State University, which is a made-up university in Marvel Comics, but I think its real-life stand-in is New York University. I could be wrong, and if I am wrong, then please correct me in the comments. And while you're down there, please suggest any future videos you would like to see me do. And if you're new to this show and are interested in this sort of content, then please subscribe, ring the bell to be notified, and share this with your friends. And if you enjoyed this video, then please consider clicking the like button. If you did not enjoy it, then I do apologize, but you can hit the dislike button. And in the description of the video, I will leave links to my podcast, so please subscribe there and share that with your friends. And I'll also leave links to my social media profile so you can stay up to date on my channel and podcast and send me a message. And I'll also leave a link to my Patreon page and merch store, so if you'd like to support this show financially, I would greatly appreciate that. Anyway, Peter was in a decent spot because he was in college, he was living with Harry, he had been dating Gwen exclusively for a while now. He had gone on a few dates with Mary Jane, but he's exclusive with Gwen at this point. And the story begins, well, the first issue collected in here, and we get a foreword by Jerry Conway and an afterword by John Romita. But the first issue collected is a story where Spider-Man fights Dr. Octopus. Doc Ock escapes from jail, and his arms were in New York City, but he was in the state pen in Illinois. And we know that Otto is locked up in Illinois because when he inevitably escapes, using his telekinetic connection to his arms, or telepathic, excuse me, it says nearby at Chicago's O'Hare Airport. And that's how we know that he's locked up in the state penitentiary in Illinois. But Otto breaks out using the telepathic link to his arms, and Spider-Man is like, whoa, what's going on here? When Otto inevitably makes it to, well, no, he's like, whoa, what's going on here? Because the arms are, you know, just going on their own. He's like, whoa, Doc Ock's arms. And J. Jonah Jameson and his son John, who's an astronaut, are in Chicago because they're because John is part of the military sort of enclave that will be hosting the Chinese General Su or Vietnamese General Su. It's not very clear because, you know, it's 1972. America got out of the war in 1973, but it didn't officially end until 75. So, but they're trying to broker, you know, an armistice, and Jonah wants to interview General Su, but, you know, the commander there is like, no, you're not allowed in to the room. You can stay on the plane, but like in the passenger section. But yeah, we get this peace summit here, and Jonah's like, come on, just let me in. But meanwhile, Otto gets his arms back. I don't know how they got from New York to Illinois that quickly, but, you know, Otto jumps on the plane that Jonah and all the military men are on, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna hold you guys captive so that when the plane lands, I get some money, and, you know, then that will lead into my ultimate plan of getting revenge on Spider-Man. So he holds the plane hostage, and Peter's at the Bugle getting paid for some pictures by Robbie Robertson and Betty Brant's there, like, the 747's coming in, Mr. Robertson, but, you know. Then Robbie's like, Miss Brant, I just got off the phone. Well, no, she's talking to Peter, and then Robbie's like, I just got off the phone, Betty. You know, Peter and I gotta go and catch the plane. And George Stacy, Gwen's father, who is a retired police captain at this point and is running for district attorney of New York City, he's there, and they are, you know, shutting down the airport. I think it's John F. Kennedy Airport, and they're, you know, trying to get the protesters who are there against General Su to, like, knock it off because there's a hostage situation, but they're like, oh, it's our First Amendment right. Yes, it is your right as an American citizen to protest, but, you know, this is a very delicate situation and you're not helping, because you could, you know, send Otto off the deep end and yada 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 yada. So anyway, Peter slips away, puts on his Spider-Man costume, sneaks onto the plane after it lands, and fights Doc Ock. And it seems like Otto dies when the plane explodes after everyone has gotten off. But as we learn in the next issue, he survived. It's even called Doc Ock Lives. So Peter reads in the newspaper that Dr. Octopus is dead, and he meets up with Randy Robertson, Robbie's son, and they're talking about how they're going to a protest to help with the air pollution problem. And, you know, he's like, come on, Gwen's going to be there, Mary Jane's going to be there, all the cool cats are going to be there. He's like, listen, Randy, I'm sorry, I got other things to do. I'd like to help, but I got, you know, stuff to do. And he's like, come on, man. I was like, hey, don't guilt trip me. I've got enough guilt as it is. And I like how Peter throws the paper in the trash can and then he walks away. Then Doc Ock's arm reaches over, grabs the newspaper, and he's like, oh, they think I'm dead. Excellent. That'll help in my plan to kill Spider-Man. But then Peter, goes up to a roof, puts on his costume, and he's like, I gotta look for Doc Ock, just in case. And they run across each other. But as he's swinging around, before that we get this funny moment where he swings by the Daily Bugle and Jonas sees him out the window. He starts yelling at him, shaking his fist, I'll get you, Spider-Man. And Robbie's like, whoa, he's not doing anything, he's just moving around the city, he's a menace. Anyway, so then he runs into Doc Ock, who's, bringing down a smokestack, and so they fight. And, it's a really intense fight. They're trading blows. Spidey's cracking jokes. And, water tower, not a water tower, like one of those things that holds water is going to fall onto some pedestrians below, and Spidey holds it up with his back and whoosh, gets it off, and then water goes over there. But then Doc Ock grabs him, and I really love this splash page by Gil Kane. It looks so good, and it's inked by John Romita. Absolutely beautiful. Then in the next issue we get the big one. So their fight, Spidey runs out of web fluid, so he uses Doc Ock's arm to swing through the window of the building, and he's crawling around hiding, and Doc Ock's arms are following him. It's really cool. And Peter escapes. He throws a spider tracer onto the arms. He's like, man, I gotta go back home and make some more web fluid. Whew! And he's walking down the street, and George Stacy comes up. He's like, hey, Peter, what's going on? You all right? He's like, oh, yeah. Because last time he spoke to Mr. Stacy, Peter was under the weather. And then he just faints because he's so exhausted, and he wakes up to the beautiful face of Gwen Stacy, his girlfriend, and she's like, oh, I'll take care of you forever, and I love you, and it's sickeningly sweet. And then her father's like, come on now, Gwen, let the man rest. And he's like, I hate being a spoil sport, Gwen, but I think he'll be perfectly okay after this. I've never known anyone with such amazing powers of recuperation. And Peter's thinking to himself, does he know that I'm Spider-Man? Spoiler alert, he does. And Peter leaves Gwen's house, goes back home, makes some more web fluid, then he makes a special concoction. And look how ripped my boy is. And although he's 20, 21 at this point. But he checks in on Harry, who's asleep, and he's like, okay, good. By the time you wake up, I should be home. And then he runs off into the night, and he gets ambushed by Doc Ock, who's like, you idiot, of course I found your spider tracer. So then they fight, and it's a really intense fight. Spider-Man uses his special new web fluid to which has a special chemical which will affect his mental connection to the arms. And so the arms start fighting back, and Doc Ock's like, oh shit, I'm gonna get crushed by my own arms. and Spider-Man gets smacked by them, and then they destroy a chimney, and that chimney's rubble starts to fall down onto the street, and it almost crushes a little boy, but George Stacy dives, tackles the boy out of the way, and is crushed by the rubble. And Spider-Man is horrified. He goes down, moves the rubble aside, picks him up, and he's like, "I'm dying." And he's like, "No, I gotta get you to the hospital." So he runs up the wall, and he brings him up to the roof, to another roof, and George reveals that he knew that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, and to take care of Gwen, he says, "Be good to her, son. Be good to her. She loves you so very much." And Spider-Man holds the man who would be a father figure to him and vows to always love and cherish Gwen. Then in the next issue, we see the funeral, and a lot of people are in attendance. It's very tragic. Gwen is obviously beside herself. First her mother died, now her father. And Jonah and Robbie are talking. "Stacy was always a bit too liberal to suit me, but he was a fine man, Robbie, a good man." And Robbie says, "And he left this world the way he would have wanted to, giving up his life to save another." Then we meet a man named Sam Bullitt, who is also running for district attorney, and now that his main rival is dead, he is thinking that, things should be, pretty smooth sailing from here. But, in classic politician fashion, he has an ulterior motive. He wants to use the death of his opponent to galvanize his supporters and to boost his chances of winning the election. And Gwen and Peter are in a car, and Gwen is saying how she'll never forgive, how she blames Spider-Man for her father's death, and she'll never forgive him. And Peter's like, "Oh shit, one of these days I was gonna tell her that I'm Spider-Man, but I don't think I can now." But then Gwen goes into Sam Bullitt's office the next day. She looks him in the eye and she gives him a firm handshake, and lo and behold, she gets the job as his secretary. And that's how you can tell that this story was written in the 1970s, because that's how you could get a job back then, just by walking into a place. You don't have to write a cover letter, present your resume and said cover letter. You don't have to do 5 interviews only to get a call saying, "Thank you, but we're going for someone with a bit more experience in this field." Click, and you're just like, "Oh my gosh." At the time of recording, it is November of 2025, and I have been out of work for a while, so I'm a little bit stressed, but support the Patreon and help me. But I also use that money to help better my YouTube channel, because I use it to buy comic books and toys to review, and also just to have money to save for bills and such. But regardless of that, so Gwen gets the job as the secretary, and she's having this conversation with Bullitt, and he's being the slippery politician with the ulterior motive, who's like, "Yep, I'm going to use this to my advantage," because the daughter of the man who was my closest rival in this race is going to support me, so I can use that. Then he calls up Jonah Jameson and he's like, hey, can I count on your newspaper to support me? And Jameson's like, sure. If you hate Spider-Man, then I'll support you. And Robbie's like, I don't trust this guy, Jonah. He seems quite fishy. And Jonah's like, it's all right, Robbie. And he's like, well, I don't think so. But yeah, Peter sees Robbie exit and he's like, oh, Robbie doesn't seem in too good a mood, so that means Jonah's probably in a good mood, which means I gotta go home. And he takes a shower, he's watching the TV, and Bullet's being interviewed by either Walter Cronkite or the next best thing. And he's like, yeah, I'm running on, a Law and Order ticket. I hate Spider-Man. I'm gonna lock him up, and I'm gonna lock up all these other people who I don't like. And Spider-Man's like, oh geez, this guy's really gunning for me. So then Spidey's swinging around the city. He notices not a lot of people are walking around, but there are, cops paired up in twos as opposed to just, single cops walking the beat. But he's like, that's weird. And then he's like, well, I guess, nothing's going on. Might as well go back into my regular clothes, walk back home. And Bullet and his cronies are driving around looking for him, and they're just like, there he is. He can tell us how to get to Spider-Man because he takes all the photos of him for the newspaper. So his guys beat him up. They're like, where's Spider-Man? I don't know. And even if I did know, I'm not going to tell you punks. And so they leave him. He follows them. He roughs up one of the guys. He's like, listen, tell your boss to smarten up, leave Parker alone, or I'm going to come for him. And then the issue ends with Peter going back to his apartment, and he climbs through the window, and Gwen's there with Bullet, and he's like, aha, we thought you had a connection to Parker, so we thought we'd come into his place. And lo and behold, here you are. And Gwen's like, Spider-Man, the man who killed my father. And Peter's like, oh shit. And the next issue, I really love this cover. But the issue begins with Peter like, I gotta think on my feet quickly. Okay, I'll grab Gwen, jump out the window, and try to convince her that I'm not the bad guy. And people are like, look, up there, Spider-Man's grabbed that woman. And Bullet's thinking to himself, well, if the cops catch him, or if he, gets killed, I can still use this to my advantage. I don't really care about the girl, so phooey on her. And Bobby Drake, who at this point, the X-Men comic book had been canceled, and he is just doing his own thing while the other X-Men are doing their own thing. So Bobby's out with his girlfriend, and she's like, oh, Bobby, look up there. Spider-Man has taken that poor girl. And he's like, well, I gotta send my girl home and chase after Spider-Man. So he calls her a cab. He's like, sorry, baby. You go home. I gotta hit the sack. And so he runs into an alley, whoosh, takes off his clothes, ices up, and then he starts giving chase. And Peter has stopped. He put Gwen on a roof. He's like, now that you're finally quiet, I've got some things to tell you. First, about that dum-dum Parker. And Gwen says, you loathsome, arrogant savage, you aren't even fit to mention Peter's name. He's more man than you could ever hope to be. And Peter's thinking, oh, shucks. And Bobby shows up and he's like, all right, buddy, you let that girl go. So then they start fighting, and he's like, oh man, I gotta give this guy the slip. Because at this point, Spider-Man has already met and worked with the X-Men before, but he's like, didn't you guys split up? So he's a little confused, but you know, he's like, I gotta give Iceman the slip. And this is before they became amazing friends. And you know, the police are chasing after them at the behest of Bullet, who's like, I gotta use this, I gotta become DA. So Bobby picks up Gwen, takes her back down to the street, and the police take her home. And then Jonah calls up Bullet. He's like, listen, I learned some stuff about you, so you cannot count on my newspaper support, so fuck you. Click. And they're like, oh, wise guy, see? So his guy gets the gun. He's like, all right, let's go teach him some manners. So as it turns out, Bullet is not that much, isn't a nice guy, because he has a lot of friends who are racist, and it is implied, although not clearly stated in the book, that he could be supported by the certain clan. And I was like, oh boy, that escalated quickly. But you know, hey, if you gotta villainize a guy, you know, you gotta have him be associated with the clan. So Bullet and his cronies barge into the office, and they're like, okay, we got evidence on you, Bullet, we'll publish it, plus you beat up my guy Parker, so you know, fuck you. And Peter had already gotten back to the Bugle because he figured this would happen, so he went to protect Jonah and Robbie. And then we see Peter, the guys grab Robbie and they take him away, and Peter rushes to the roof, changes, starts following the car, but then Iceman attacks him in midair. He's like, oh, Iceman, you idiot, I'm chasing down that car, they're gonna hurt that poor man. He was like, you might be lying, but you know, I'm a superhero, so when you mention someone in danger, I gotta, you know, that piques my interest. But they fight still, and then we get some really cool panels of them fighting. Spidey smashing the ice bridge that he uses to, you know, move through the air. And they go to this abandoned warehouse, and Peter's thinking, well, the old abandoned warehouse routine, they must have been brought up on B movies. I was like, oh, all right, inside. Boss is waiting for you. And Peter's like hanging from the ceiling watching them, and they're spouting all about how they're going to kill him, and you know, how it's going to do wonders for them. Bobby comes and he looks through the skylight and he's like, oh shit, Spider-Man was right. So they both leap into action, save Robbie from being shot, beat up the bad guys, and then they check on Robbie, he's all right, and then they go to this fundraiser where Bullet's giving a speech, and they expose him, and then the police arrest him. Bada boom, bada bing. Now we get into the actual story that we're here to review. The Amazing Spider-Man number 121. On the cover it says Turning Point, but they withhold the title until the last page, but it's called The Night Gwen Stacy Died. So yeah, we kind of had a few issues, and Harry has relapsed and he's not doing well, Mary Jane and Gwen and Harry's doctor are there checking in on him, and Peter's looking through the window. He's like, oh man, my buddy, he's really sick. I gotta quickly change into my regular clothes and check on him. And then he does so. Then he goes up and Norman Osborn is there. He's like, it's your fault, Parker. And Peter's like, oh gosh, is he getting over his amnesia? Because the Green Goblin figured out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, but then he got amnesia, and so he forgot that he was the Goblin and that Peter was Spider-Man. But he's like, oh my gosh, is he, recovering? And Gwen and MJ come out and like, oh, Peter. And Norman's like, all right, I don't need you three. Harry doesn't need you three. He just needs me and my doctor. So Peter's like, come on, girls, I'll buy you a Coke. And they're lamenting how Harry's in this position. And Norman gets a call from his stockbroker. His stock is going down 13%. And he's like, oh shit, if this keeps up, I'm gonna be ruined. And Harry's like, Dad, is that you? Oh, Dad, I'm sorry. Ugh. Faints. He's like, oh, my poor son, I love you. I'll take care of you. And Peter, in the last issue, was up in Montreal because he was, doing a photo assignment, and he fought the Hulk. And he's handing in those photos to Robbie, but he got sick. So Jonah's like, okay, Parker, go home. I don't want you getting anyone else in the office sick. I'll send you your check in the mail. Just get out of the office right now. And Peter is like, I gotta get home fast. So he starts swinging, and he's like, I gotta go talk to Gwen and get some rest. And, oh my gosh. And Norman starts envisioning Spider-Man, and he starts remembering, and he's like, well, I'm the Green Goblin, gotta go to my warehouse lab and get my gear and get revenge. So he does go to this warehouse that he owns, puts on his costume, and he flies over to Harry and Peter's apartment. Gwen's there, and she's thinking about how, she wants to help Harry, and how much, she needs to talk to Peter about this so that they can, help him together. Then in the background we see Norman pull up, and Peter, gets home. He finds Gwen's purse on the floor, and the apartment's a wreck, and there's a pumpkin bomb on the purse. He's like, oh shit. So he starts swinging, and he goes to the Brooklyn Bridge. Although, I've never been to New York City, but I've seen photographs, and you can tell that this is clearly the Brooklyn Bridge, which John Romita and Gil Kane drew. However, Jerry Conway, the writer, was like, he writes, the George Washington Bridge. It figures Osborn would pick something named after his favorite president. He's got the same sort of hang-up for dollar bills. And I'm like, did you write the script before they drew it, Jerry? Or did you just forget what it looked like? Because the Marvel Comics office is in New York City. The DC Comics office used to be in New York City, but now I think it's in San Francisco. So anyway, that weird bit of trivia aside, Goblin starts taunting Spider-Man, and they have this cool fight. Spider-Man gets a really good punch in, which knocks Norman off his glider. He starts falling, but then quickly recovers. Spidey climbs up to get Gwen to take her home, and to take her to the hospital to make sure she's okay. And the Goblin comes up and knocks Gwen off of the bridge, and Spider-Man spins a web, catching her, but her neck is broken. As you can see, the onomatopoeia snap. That is her neck breaking. Peter pulls her up, and he finds that the woman that he loves is dead. And he's like, no, I saved you. You can't be dead. And Norman starts taunting him, and he says, you'll pay for this, Osborn. I'm going to get you, Goblin. I'm going to destroy you slowly. And when you start begging for me to end it, I'm going to remind you of one thing. You killed the woman I love, and for that, you're going to die. Then they reveal the title, and to be continued. And this collected edition wraps up with The Amazing Spider-Man number 122, the following issue, where it is entitled The Goblin's Last Stand, where we get this tragic but beautifully rendered splash page of Peter holding Gwen's lifeless body and the Green Goblin trying to fly towards him to kill him. Peter brings her down to the bridge onto the dock, and he swings back up and they fight. He starts choking him in a rear naked choke, and he's like, oh my gosh, Spider-Man's gonna kill me. And Spider-Man is savagely beating him, but then Goblin knocks him off and he manages to fly away. Spider-Man swings back over to Gwen because he sees police cars, and he's like, oh man, I can't let, these reporters get their grubby mitts on her. So he's like, hey, back off. And then he cradles her, one last time. And he thinks back to the happy memories. He remembers the day he first met Gwen Stacy, his first day at college. They'd each been unsure of the other's feelings, each unwilling to make that first awkward step, until, miraculously, the step was taken, and they found themselves in love. The happiness, the tragedy, in a rush it all comes back to him. The evening Gwen's father died, and Spider-Man was blamed for the death of a man he'd almost loved, Captain Stacy, who died trying to save a child. Yes, he remembers the sorrow, the self-pity, the joy, and the fear, and through it all, a part of it all, he remembers Gwen. Gwen, as much a victim of Spider-Man's lifestyle as Peter Parker. Didn't his specter keep them apart? Wasn't it Spider-Man who stood between them and happiness? Till in the end he stood between Gwen and life? Well, hadn't he? Hadn't he? And we get this, beautiful art here. Peter tells the police sergeant she doesn't need an ambulance, she's dead, and Spider-Man killed her. So then the police try to take him in, but then he starts thrashing them, swings away, they start shooting, and he gets away. He takes off his costume, and look at this man's face. This man is on a mission of vengeance. He goes to Osborn's house, looking to kill him. Harry's there, overdosed and reeling from the drugs, and he's like, Peter, help me. I need to know if you're real or if it's just my drug-addled mind. Please, Peter, don't leave me. It's very, very sad. So Peter goes to the Bugle where Robbie just got the news bulletin, and he's like, listen, Robbie, I need you to tell me if Osborn owns any abandoned warehouses or theaters or anything, and if he's been there recently within the last hour. Robbie gets off the horn and he's like, yep, he was seen near one of his warehouses just 40 minutes ago. And Jonah comes in, he's like, hey, you killed that poor girl. Spider-Man's like, shut up. And then he swings away. Then we see the warehouse where Osborn is tinkering with his gear. He's like, okay, Spider-Man's gonna come any minute now. I gotta be ready. I gotta be able to blow this shit up. And Spider-Man sneaks up on him. It's really, really cool. He's like, ta-da! Wait, what? Oh! So they fight in a very, very brutal brawl, and Spider-Man's like, I'm gonna kill you. You murdered the woman that I love, so I'm gonna kill you. But then he's like, you know what? I should just arrest you because death is too good for you. Also, I'm not a murderer. Yet. And Osborn calls his glider, and Spider-Man jumps out of the way, and he is impaled by his glider. And Spider-Man's like, well, I don't feel any better. I just feel hollow. But, you know, I guess you got what was coming to you. So he walks away. And he's being watched, which will be picked up in the next issue. But, you know, that's not important for right now. What is important is the epilogue, where Peter goes home and he starts crying, and Mary Jane is there, and she's like, hey Petey, I heard about Gwen, I'm really torn up. He's like, you? Torn up? Don't make me laugh, Mary Jane. You wouldn't be sorry if your own mother died. What do you care about straights like me and Gwen? Get out of here. I know how you hate sick beds. And believe me, I wouldn't want to spoil your fun. And for a moment, she considers leaving, but she's like, no, he needs me. So she closes the door. The end. And then we get the afterword by John Romita and some art. Very, very nice art. And that is the end of The Night Gwen Stacy Died. A tragic tale that shows us the death of innocence and the death of a character who had been beloved not just by the main character of the book, but also by fans and the creators of the characters. But Jerry Conway knew that he was going to tell this story because he preferred Mary Jane, as do I. I like Gwen as a character, but you know, her death, although it was tragic, also helped Spider-Man in his growth. And we wouldn't get that if this story wasn't published. And I have to commend them for that, because there are a lot of conflicting reports about how the story came to be. There's Stan Lee's side, Jerry Conway's side, John Romita's side, and you know, everyone has a bit of truth in their story, but I don't really want to get into that at this point. I definitely recommend that you buy this and read it if you haven't already. I left out some parts. I left out some minor parts, you know, for you to enjoy if you so choose to read this, but I would give this book a 10 out of 10. It is gorgeous to look at. The artwork is phenomenal. The story is very, very well written. And yeah, we just get some poignant dialogue and narration and awesome fights between Spider-Man and two of his greatest villains and one of his closest friends. But yeah, I definitely recommend that you buy this. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching this video on the National Timely Action Hour, taking the time out of your day. I sincerely hope that you have a wonderful day. Bye.
I'd save every day like a treasure, and then again I would spend them with you.